Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Limit Breakdown, where we review everything in TV shows, movies, and entertainment. I'm your host, Sid,
I'm Migs.
and today we're doing a very special Barbenheimer. Barbenheimer is Barbie and Oppenheimer both being released on July 21st. So due to that, we're doing a special-ish type thing. For this review, we're going to be doing Oppenheimer first. Now, our too long didn't watch review of Oppenheimer.
So we thought that this movie had amazing visuals. It had a fantastic cast and acting, and there was great storytelling.
Now, though this movie had limited cons, I will say it could have been 30 minutes shorter, and some of the nudity seemed a little gratuitous. So due to that, we gave it
4.5.
Yep. Now, so if you want to listen to our full deep dive spoiler-filled review, stick around after our intro.
Everybody, welcome back to part one of our Barbenheimer review, our review of Oppenheimer. So let's get right to it, man. What we've been looking forward to this one for quite a while. So what were your thoughts on this?
You know, I actually really enjoyed this movie. I knew I was going to enjoy it from the beginning. So Linda is a huge history buff. She was really excited for it. This is like a biopic on the atomic bomb and specifically on Oppenheimer. I was excited from the start. And Christopher Nolan is the director, and he has always done some pretty fantastic stuff.
Yeah.
And obviously, it did fantastic.
Yeah.
I genuinely loved the movie. Though I walked in with high expectations, I walked out equally as happy.
Yeah.
Which is sometimes rare, right? You don't want to walk in high and then leave low or, whatever.
Yeah.
So, overall, fantastic movie. What about you?
I'm a little bit more mixed on it.
Mm-hmm.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was shot beautifully. I thought the storytelling was great. Acting was great. It definitely left me thinking more than obviously given the subject matter, I knew that curiously enough, between Barbie and Oppenheimer, I thought this movie was going to be the one that was going to cause me to have the most thoughts. And it actually
turned out to be Barbie.
Yeah, it turned out to be Barbie.
Yeah, Barbie had a great monologue, and we'll talk about that in the next video.
But this it hit a lot of points. I didn't know too much about Oppenheimer, the man himself, before this, so it was interesting getting to know a little bit about him, getting to know a little bit about the process of how the Manhattan Project got started and how all of that. And apparently, the key to Americans getting the nuke before the Nazis was anti-Semitism. So
yeah, how about that?
1 point for racism.
What brings people together is hate towards other people. Yeah. So overall, I agree with you on those points. It definitely got me thinking at the end of the movie. It definitely made you think. So obviously, great backstory on Oppenheimer himself and how the Manhattan Project and the atomic bomb came to life, as well as kind of like thinking of, once you create something so devastating, what happens next?
Yeah. Right.
So really thought-provoking movie as far as that goes.
Also, I thought it was also a very, obviously, you take the core concept of the nuclear weapon, but also when you explore the relationship between theory and practical. And I thought that was a very interesting, I guess, perspective that they showed, because, even early on in the film, it showed how Oppenheimer was really not that great at the practical of things. Like, he was a terrible lab student. He was, but he excelled at theory.
Yeah.
So I thought,
you come up with great ideas, you cannot do them. See, I'm like that. I have great ideas in my mind. I just can't put it together. I know how a wrench works. I just don't know what to use with it.
Yeah, I'm the wrench guy.
Oppenheimer. Just kidding. All right. So I do want to hit on few things. So, Oppenheimer had a fantastic cast. Some of them who I was not expecting to be in the movie. When I saw it on the screen, I was like, wow, I did not expect this person.
Yeah.
So right off the bat, Oppenheimer played by Cillian Murphy, who is famously known for Peaky Blinders, as well as he's a Scarecrow from Christopher Nolan's Batman series.
Yes,
as well.
He was.
So, fantastic job. Obviously, the beautiful, the lovely Florence Pugh as Jean Tatlock. Which, side note, I did not know there's such a high communist party ideas going around in U.S. at that time. Like, I was not expecting that.
So that's an interesting footnote. Without going too deep into the history, which I mean it's kind of par for the course with this particular movie, but before the whole McCarthy Red Scare, in the 50s, which is I think part of the reason why Oppenheimer was kind of like why Strauss was able to do what he did to Oppenheimer was in large part to Senator McCarthy's or what they call McCarthyism is basically anybody you don't like, you accuse them of being a communist.
Commie.
And so, there were, it wasn't uncommon for people to have more, left-leaning ideas, especially back then. And you got to think of it too. The turn of the century, there was, a huge labor movement, huge rise in unions and pro-labor movements and stuff like that. So it makes sense historically speaking for there to be more people that leaned in that direction. I thought it was noteworthy that the movie kind of towed the line. Like they made it seem like he never was actually a member of the Communist Party. Now
he never joined.
Now I don't know if that's historically accurate. From what I understand, his brother was a communist, his girlfriend was a communist, a whole bunch of people in his life, inner circle were communists. To me, it doesn't make sense that he wasn't. But
that was the whole tagline of the movie, right? Like he's like, I never joined the party.
Yeah,
but he did send money.
Yeah,
but he just never joined the party.
Yeah, so I think it's one of those tidbits of history where it just conveniently got swept under the rug.
I would have to look into it. So far, I've seen this movie is pretty spot on with historical facts. Obviously, they have to dramatize a little bit for the silver screen, but so far, I've heard that it's pretty spot on.
Yeah.
Great acting by RDJ playing Louis Strauss, who at the end of the twist of the movie turned out to be the real, I guess, antagonist the whole time. Why Oppenheimer was, put on not trial, just board.
Well, it was a review board, and it was basically he was stripped of his security clearance.
Yeah,
and the reason they wanted to do that was to minimize his influence, because after the war ended, and as the Cold War gained momentum, Oppenheimer was vastly against expansion of the nuclear program into hydrogen bombs, and that was also kind of one of the things that I thought was a little bit naive. And I don't know if it's one of those things that's kind of how the character was, or I don't know if he was written in this way in order to seem more sympathetic to modern audiences. But for me, it's him as a theoretical physicist, as understanding what he was building. Like, he knew he was building a weapon. He knew he was building something that had the potential destruction. He even himself said in the movie, because they were talking about, oh, well, what if we did a demonstration of the bomb and didn't actually use it? And he says, no, this has to be used. Yeah. So he was in full support of the bomb being dropped on Nagasaki. I think he thought the one on Hiroshima was the first.
Hiroshima was the first.
Yeah. I guess he disagreed with the second one being dropped on Nagasaki.
Yeah.
And then as it moved on, post the war, the continuation of of the Manhattan Project into things that created the hydrogen bomb, which was significantly more powerful than the weapon that Oppenheimer created. And so he used a lot of his political influence that he had gained as a way to speak out and to advocate for more restraint.
Yeah.
And people like Strauss were against that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Emily Blunt playing Kitty, Oppenheimer's wife.
Mm-hmm.
Linda hates Emily Blunt for some reason. I don't know why. She's like, she was not a good character, and I don't like Emily Blunt. I was like, did you not like her because you don't like Emily Blunt, or did you truly not like the character? She's like, I don't like both. I thought she did a great job. Obviously, the whole movie, she's just a raging alcoholic, doesn't care for her kids and stuff like that. But over time, she did start to support her husband, which I thought was pretty cool. That's all I can say about Emily Blunt. It wasn't.
I thought the character was interesting. Just in it's kind of the price you pay, kind of like the price you pay for Genius type thing. Not so much with her, but her as a supporting character towards Oppenheimer. And the I guess sad reflection of him having to entrust his kids with his friends because she could, he needed her for his moral support, and then she, couldn't therefore take care of him and take care of the kids. And so it was kind of like the cost you pay for, and it's one of those things that I guess was never really, is not really ever talked about in the history books, with the aspect of the things that people had to do in order for us to be able to get the advantage of gaining that nuclear weapon.
Gotcha. The sacrifices they made.
Yeah.
Per se. And that's a true sacrifice.
Yeah. And I mean, even the other scientists, like, when he was talking with Matt Damon, it was General Leslie Groves. Yeah. When they were talking about bringing people to Los Alamos, he was like, we have to be able to let them bring their family or we won't get the best.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know that it wasn't just scientists over at Los Alamos. That it was scientists and their families. And you think like they're doing, I mean, this is the first nuclear weapons test. God knows what kind of side effects there was from all the exposure, from all of
because they were right there.
Yeah, they were. They were. So it's stuff that's not really discussed in history books. And then you get moving on kind of a little bit beyond the movie. It kind of leads into the second half, but his guilt over what happened. And like I said, while I do think that it was a little bit naive of him, because I guess the way that I understood his reasoning behind making the bomb was he wanted to help the US make the nuclear weapon before Hitler could, because he knew that in Hitler's hand, the bomb would mean doom for humanity.
Yeah.
Right? And that was his original reasoning. But once Germany was defeated and once Hitler had killed himself, that sense of urgency kind of ceased. And then it kind of changed into, oh, well, we need this to end the war, and we need this, to make a statement. So his reasoning was, now that the urgent threat is over, we're going to use this as an opportunity to end all war going forward. Because he thought if we use this weapon one time and show everyone what this weapon can do, it will be enough of a deterrent to basically stop a war. And I think that was immensely naive.
Yeah. And actually to that point, so Matt Damon, who played Leslie Groves, I believe he was a general. I love Matt Damon. I think he's a phenomenal actor. And I've noticed recently he's been doing a lot more biopics rather than like more like fictional stuff. And he's doing a lot more biopics. But anyways, there was a line that he said in the movie, and he's like, no, we're going to drop two. One to show them what you're saying, and one to do it again so they understand that we can keep doing this over and over and over again. That it's not just a threat. Yeah. It's not just a one-time show, which in theory makes sense, right? As a psychological thing makes sense. Oh, these people can just keep ramping out this devastating thing. But obviously in practice, it's mind-blowing.
It's such look, as Americans, we have this bad habit of romanticizing our history.
Mm-hmm.
We take the things that we've done in the past and we try to paint it in the best light possible.
Mm-hmm.
And look, I wasn't alive at the time. None of us were. Well, none of us here.
Yes.
But the people, I'm sure that the people in charge made whatever decision they thought was best for the world that they live in. But looking reflexively, I can't in good conscience say that I agree with the decision, because I don't think they fully understood what they were doing, because even the initial projections was like the bomb that they dropped was like 20 times more powerful than what they initially anticipated it was.
Correct, yeah.
So, the just the sheer brutality and the fact that it wasn't, both Hiroshima and Nagasaki were not military targets. Mm-hmm. They were civilian targets with the intention of having as many civilian casualties as possible. Now, the counter argument to that is that, the point of it was to prevent a long drawn out invasion of mainland Japan, one in which, the Japanese are renowned for their warrior spirit, and so they would not have given up easily. Mm-hmm. And this was basically meant to something to essentially break their back and will them into submission. And so, from historical anecdotes, there's a couple of footnotes that says they were on the verge of surrendering and that the bomb was.
So from what I've heard is when the first bomb hit, they did surrender and they signed the paperwork. Mm-hmm. And then I forget the time lapse between the first and the second.
It was about a week.
Was it a week?
It was about like 5 to 7 days.
Okay. So after the first one, they signed they're like, we surrender, and then US dropped the second one.
Yeah. From what I understand, they dropped the first one and their cabinet met to discuss, and they were talking about terms of surrender. But they wanted to put a condition that they would surrender so long as the emperor could remain in power. Mm-hmm. But they hadn't formally given their surrender. At that point, the Soviets joined the war against Japan. And then right after the Soviets started sailing towards Japan, we dropped the second one. And after we dropped the second one, the emperor himself surrendered.
Gotcha. Huh. Interesting.
So it's, like I said, it's one of those complicated historical questions that's it's not an easy black and white type of discussion. It's something that requires a lot of nuance and thought process. But it's also like, what I'm afraid with movies like this is that we fall into that non too common trope of romanticizing what is ultimately, in my opinion, an atrocity.
Yeah, that makes sense. So bringing it back to the actual movie itself, so there was a lot of star-studded cast that I was not expecting in the movie. So, for example, Jack Quaid, who is famously in The Boys, he was one of the scientists that works on the Manhattan Project. Was not expecting him to be in the movie. Rami Malek, famously from Bohemian Rhapsody,
yes.
He was some sort of scientist, I believe. From they had like a sub project going on. Who at the very end of the movie gave the confession that finally took down Strauss and relieved him of his power. Was not expecting him to be in the movie at all. Josh Peck.
Yeah,
from Drake and Josh.
Yeah.
Was the one who pressed the button
to drop the nuke test.
The nuke test. And I was like, what? I looked at him and I'm like looking at him the whole time. I'm like, I know that guy. And I look over, Linda's like, yes, it's him. I'm like, what? Was not expecting Josh Peck. I didn't catch this until later either because, again, Linda's better at this. Gary Oldman was the president.
Oh, okay.
Truman. Yeah, he was Truman.
Yeah.
I was like,
huh. I didn't notice that either.
Yeah, Gary Oldman was Truman. And apparently, it is actually so that scene with Oppenheimer and Truman,
Yes.
where they're having the conversation. Yeah,
historically accurate.
It is accurate. Linda's a little upset, but the words were a little misconstrued. But I think it's the same thing. So I think he said something. Oppenheimer was like, "Oh, my hands are red in blood because of whatever." And Truman in the movie says, "Oh, well, I'm the one that dropped the bomb, so it's cool." And the real life quote is somewhere along the lines of, "I'm the one that."
Well, from what I understand, the way that conversation went was Oppenheimer was basically telling him that he felt like he had blood in his hands.
Yeah.
And from the accounts, Truman handed him a napkin.
Yeah. And Truman's like, "I'm the one that pressed the button."
Yeah.
So he's like, let me worry about it. But
Yeah.
in the movie, he was a little more like, "Don't worry about it."
Yeah. And then as he was walking out, it's like, "Don't ever let that crybaby walk back in
which
here."
apparently is also accurate, which I did not know. And Linda was like, "Yeah, he actually did say that," but it was more of a, it was more like a crybaby as he was walking away.
Yeah.
Not expecting that either.
Yeah. I mean, dude, you gotta figure, especially that time, like,
yeah. It's insane. Another person that I was not expecting was Casey Affleck, Ben Affleck's brother. He's been in some weird movies that I've never seen. I don't really care for him. He was in the movie. So really, really crazy cast. All did a fantastic job.
No, as far as the cinematography goes, the way that the story was weaved, I liked how it kind of went forward and back in telling the story. I thoroughly enjoyed some of the visuals. Some of it felt like kind of a fever dream. Like the part after the weapon was tested, when he was celebrating, when he's look over at the crowd and you see the one girl's face and her face is peeling off
because he understands what it does.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that scene was insane.
Yeah.
Like the background is vibrating. Is just his voice.
And it kind of brought everything full circle because at the beginning of the movie, you see him kind of looking up at the stars and kind of like he really couldn't focus, couldn't rest because he kept seeing things.
Yeah.
And it was just,
I will say, so the scene when they finally tested the bomb, the music, the way they filmed it, there was I will say I was quite literally at the edge of my seat when that bomb scene was, or the testing of the bomb scene was going on, and I had looked around and two seats down from me there was another lady that was literally just like very intense scene, very well filmed. I loved the explosion and then nothing. Then he had now I am death. And then the sound, and I'm like, oh, okay, they're just not gonna have, because movies do that where there's just the explosion, nothing, and a second later there's a sound, which is accurate. This one they took a long pause and then hit it. Beautiful. I thought it was fantastic. It was fantastic, and I think it was at that moment you also see his brain turning. And he's like, oh snap. That's a big explosion.
Well, I think that's also accurate to how the explosion itself goes, because from all the accounts is you see the light before you ever hear it. And so it's I don't know if you're familiar with this, but there's an account of a man who survived both bombs.
Yeah, he went to work in Nagasaki. He's like, I gotta go to work. And then he got hit with the second atomic bomb. That's insane.
I mean, that's the definition of it's not your time.
Okay.
But
there has been, I don't know if you've heard this, there has been backlash on a particular scene in the movie.
Okay.
And I hate to say this, but it's actually from a very particular group of Indians.
Okay.
So if you remember in the movie, there's the infamous sex scene with Florence Pugh. They're doing their thing. She stops, picks up a book, which is written in Sanskrit, which is native language to India. Like, imagine like Latin to English. And while she's reading it, it's a famous line, and now I become death, right? And then they continue. So the super conservative Indians have gone off the rail and saying that if they don't remove that scene from that particular scene from the movie, they're gonna boycott the movie in India. I was very happy.
Listen, you're not gonna please everybody. So.
I was very happy to see that in the movie.
Yeah.
As an Indian, born in India, I was like, oh wow, that they're having,
Yeah, but the objection is coming from a religious point of view, yes. So you can't. Yeah.
I found it funny.
Yeah.
Well, it's not funny. I found it great in the movie, and when I read that, I found funny. I'm like, I understand, I really do, but I don't.
That's from the Bhagavad Gita.
Bhagavad Gita, yeah. And I was like,
that's like basically like the Buddhist Bible.
No, it's Hindu.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's comparative to. So we have multiple books instead of just one book. It's comparative to the Old Testament.
Okay.
Right. So something like that. It's still a holy book, but
yeah,
comparatively to the Old Testament.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's the only backlash I've heard, obviously from Indians, because they're
a couple of years ago at Dragon Con,
a
couple of monks were walking around with the Bhagavad Gita, and they gave me one. I have it still somewhere. I actually took it because I meant to read it. Did
they give it for free?
Yeah,
for free. Oh, then ask for a. Oh, that's what they do. They've come up to me. They've come up to Shrita. They're like, "Here you go for free," and then they're like.
No, I got it for, man. They didn't, but it wasn't like, it was like a legit monk. He was dressed as a monk. I don't know, but he gave it to me for free. We sat there in like a couple days, because that was like on a Friday at Dragon Con, and then I ran into him again on Sunday, and he's like, "Have you read anything?" And I'd read like a couple pages, and we talked about it. It was actually pretty cool.
Nice.
But I guess maybe the scam started after that. I don't know.
Yeah, because I remember at college they was to come and they're like, "Oh, it was for free." Technically you can take it, but then they want compensation. Anyways, getting back to Oppenheimer.
So, let's go ahead and start to wrap this bad boy up. What are your final thoughts on this movie?
As I said from the beginning, I thought this movie is fantastic. It's a great biopic on Oppenheimer. For someone that doesn't know or even knows about the history, it's still good. The story is very, very well developed. It gives you obviously the background of how the atomic bomb and the Manhattan Project went, as well as a cinematography point of view, cinema point of view, I guess I should say, of a story with RDJ's character as at the end, the twist of being the bad guy that gave all the files to the agent, saying, "Oh well, he's actually a communist."
Yeah.
Which I thought was insane. So overall, fantastic movie. Highly recommend watching it in IMAX.
Yeah, if you get a chance to see it, go for the 70 millimeter projection of it. It is absolutely fantastic. Takes up the entire screen. It's fantastic. That's how I was able to see it, so it's pretty happy about it.
Nice.
But I thought the movie, like I said, agree with you. I thought the movie was great. It was thought provoking. Again, I knew the broad points of the Manhattan Project. It led me to doing a little bit more research and diving into the subject a little bit deeper. And I'm a big fan of anything that's thought provoking and makes me want to learn more or give things a deeper look. I'm all for it. So yeah, 4.5 hearts. Definitely go check it out. And we will see you guys on the part 2 of this Barbenheimer special review. So we appreciate you guys. As always, don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. We appreciate you, and stay tuned for more content.